Jack said to me and Meg have been playing music.
I'd like to introduce to you a band that you know and love. Come to you like the sound of equipment being thrown from a moving van, the sound of dead cell phones and oil rigs, the sound of empty parking lots and school buses. They love to live and live to love. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus Children of America, the White Stripes.
Hello. Come on in. The water is great. My name is Ryan Schaap, and this is the hardest podcast to podcast, the only podcast covering the White Stripes, and we're celebrating their entire musical catalog one song at a time. How's everybody doing? I'm fresh off a long weekend here in BC and in Canada. The always originally named British Columbia Day on the first weekend of August. So I've been living it up on the Sunshine Coast, having a ball. But it's time to come back to reality. Oop, there goes gravity. And it's time to join you once again on the hardest podcast to podcast. Spoiler alert, a delightful treat. Courtney Presto, a branding director and somebody who really analyzes the use and placement of colors on her Instagram account, social media channels. She's on here, and we discussed it's already a great song, but it was a great conversation as we dive into Lord Send Me an Angel, but also the very unique artwork for each of them. Because, as we talk about, there was a standard sympathy for the record industry pressing, and then there is the Pacific Rim Tour Edition, or as Ben Blackwell coined it, the Three Island Tour Edition, which is a lot more unique when you start to study it with that inquisitive eye. Last week on the podcast was a unique episode. Broke away from our strict format here to kind of discuss the big development, the whirlwind development that was me going to Chicago and getting to meet Jack White, asking him to come on the podcast. He's thinking about it, and winding up getting to go to his show that night at the Salt Shed in Chicago. That episode is eloquently titled 30 Hours in Chicago, and you should go check it out. My lovely wife and assistant editorial producer, Amanda Schultz, joins me on that. That was a lovely episode, and heard some very positive feedback about it, and I've really heard from the community that this show has created and fostered, and man, we're all working towards that goal. If you are new here, if this is your first episode or one of your first few, or maybe you just stumbled upon this episode based on a reel or a collab, let me tell you a little thing about this show. We're doing one White Stripe song per episode. We're doing every single song that they have released. That's around 140, 150 episodes. So we're looking at probably a 3-year window that this show will be active. So you got to hop in, get on this train at the ground floor, get in this elevator at the ground floor, hop on this train before it leaves the station. Whatever old-timey metaphor you want to use, hop aboard. So all of the songs are will be chosen randomly, week by week, guest by guest. Some more random than others. Some maybe a little strategic, but that's for me to decide. All songs are up for grabs except for 3 mystery songs. And those 3 mystery songs are reserved for the man himself, Jack White. Because the lofty goals of this show is to have Jack White come on this podcast. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Lofty indeed, but we're going to stick to our goals. And when he comes on, it's not going to be a all over the place interview and conversation about him as a musician. No, it would be about that first mystery song. So about that time in his music career, in his that time with his relationship with music, and just where the band was at that point and where he was. So a granular conversation with a hyper focus as it is about one of those 3 mystery songs. So that is the goal that we are working towards here. Now, if you're listening to this going, Ryan, what can I do to help you with this goal? And I said, thank you for asking, kind old man. Here's how you can. 1, listen to this show. Help grow our footprint. Tell a friend, tell 7 friends, tell them to bring 7 friends, tell them not to be selfish or eat shellfish if they're allergic, but help grow the footprint of this show. There are a lot of White Stripes fans out there. There are a lot of fans of music. There are people that want to get into this band that by the younger generation has been probably coined as indie sleaze or adjacent. We want more and more people on this bandwagon. We want to take this thing to the top. And I just want this show to be louder. I want it to be better, and I want it to be bigger. Much like the Guns N' Roses User Illusion tour, and then the band imploded. They spent all their money. I digress. So you can help us out by following us everywhere, interacting, sharing our content. If you know somebody that would be into this show, let them know. And if you think you know a good artist or a good creative person or somebody influential in music that you think would be a good guest for this show, well, drop me a line at ryan@hardestpodtopod.com. That link again, that email address again is ryan@hardestpodtopod.com. Check in with me there. I'd love to hear from you, and I would love any help we can of getting this show's footprint just a little bit bigger. Number 2, if you want to support this show monetarily, you want to help fund whirlwind red-eye flights to Chicago so I can ask big gets to come on this podcast, go to patreon.com/hardestpodtopod. Once again, that URL is patreon.com/hardestpodtopod. That is, without a doubt, a incredibly generous and incredibly helpful and kind way to support our show. Every little bit of money you get gets reinvested right back into this. So we are looking to make this show and our content and what we cover and how we cover it as great and as unique as possible. So every dollar that comes in from Patreon is immediately reinvested, or at least planned to. Any dollar that comes in goes right back into the podcast. You also get some pretty damn good bonus content behind the paywall, if I do say so myself. Most recently, you could hear my review of Frozen Charlotte, and you can also take a tour of my personal White Stripes vinyl. But check it out. Go to patreon.com/hardestpodtopod. And there are 2 tiers. $5 Canadian for Steady As She Goes. That gets you immediate access to all our bonus content. Or if you're feeling a little frisky, you can become a highball stepper for $20 Canadian a month. And that's where you get all the access to the bonus content. And you can say, hey, Ryan, I want you to do this. Pick your spot, shoot your shot, and you'll get that content. Head on over, take a look. It is free to look. I think that's all I've got to say on this week's show, on this intro, if you will, because last week's episode, 30 Hours in Chicago, available everywhere. That episode was, as much as it was a tale of the adventure, it was also a bit of a State of the Union about where we are on the show, what we're looking to do, and where we need to go. So check that one out and go back and dive into the rest of this catalog. We're talking about Lord Send Me an Angel with Courtney Presto in mere moments. And one thing I wanted to say before we get into it, because I forgot to bring it up on the podcast, is this is a cover. This is a blues cover that Jack and Meg did, recorded about September 2000. And it's a cover of, it's a Frankenstein of 2 Blind Willie McTell songs, Lord Send Me an Angel and Ticket Agent Blues. So it's a bit more of a well-rounded story instead of a word-for-word cover. It also is unique because Jack inserts himself. He replaces Blind Willie with himself, and you hear him referring to himself in the third person. And he's also referencing neighborhoods and areas in Detroit regarding the 3 women that he's got eyes for. So another unique approach to the White Stripes version of the blues. And this is a very special song. It's probably one of my favorite songs to play on guitar or sing along to. And you can sing along to it too by hitting pause on this podcast, going to your streaming platform of choice, typing in Lord, Send Me an Angel, finding that still-looking artwork, and giving it a listen. Why? Why would you give it a listen? 1, because it's a great song. And 2, We want it to be as fresh in your mind as it was in my mind and Courtney's mind when we discussed this. And of course, number 3, we want those fat cats at Third Man Records to know that more and more people are listening to this podcast and listening to the songs that we dissect. So when this episode comes out, they will see that little blip of streaming data for Lord Send Me an Angel, and it will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as this podcast gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But this podcast does not get bigger. That blip does not get bigger unless you help me out. I can only do so many things. I'm one man. I'm one person. But you, the respected and faithful listener or viewer of this show, help grow this motherfucking footprint, and let's have some fun on this journey together. With that being said, let's talk to Courtney. Our guest this week is a branding director whose incredible content explores the visual language of music through color and design. Her recent breakdowns of the White Stripes and Jack White's solo album artwork are must-see for fans of the band aesthetic. She is Courtney Presto. Courtney, hello, how are you doing?
Hi, Ryan. It's so nice to meet you and be here. I'm so thankful that you invited me to have this conversation. Also, I will say I found a black and red tie-dye shirt, so I tried to dress in theme today, so I could be festive.
All we care about is guest participation. The A for effort is there, and I think we'll have a lot of fun. I just got to ask, how are you influenced? Where was the idea for the type of content you're doing, where you are putting some thought, putting some analysis into things that I don't think get that analysis in album artwork and just artwork for music? What was the inspiration and what kind of drove you into the avenue you're doing?
So I was the creative director of LA Fashion Week 2023 fall season. And for that project, that was like my first really big commercial shoot. And when I say big, like in commercial land, it was small. It was like a $50,000 budget, which is tiny for a major fashion week. But there was like a kind of serendipitous events that occurred that allowed me to take on that project. And one of the things that I did is I met with each individual fashion designer and I made these way too detailed mood boards. Like I was pulling the Pantone chips, I was pulling stills from their marketing campaigns because my concept was I wanted LA Fashion Week to actually create media that was elevating the artists that we're showcasing with Fashion Week, which previously really hadn't been done before. So I was meeting with all these artists. I was having these really crazy conversations. One of them was doing a collab with Nike and they asked me to do the visuals and they were like, we want grasshoppers eating each other's heads off on top of a volcano. And I was like, this sounds sick. I'm so excited. So from there, I basically started a career of like consulting in the commercial space, mostly for fashion designers.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always had somewhat of synesthesia where I'll hear music and I see the music as well. Like certain sounds look like certain things to me and they
Sure.
pull different visuals out of me. And I'm just like a nerd about music. I just like it. Like I wouldn't say by any means I'm an expert in being able to discuss it, but I'm like an avid listener. So I, kind of was a little bit bored, I'm not going to lie. And I was like, I kind of want to just try to break some of this down using the visual side of my expertise and see if it resonates with people because I do it so much for work that it's almost like if I can have a 30-minute conversation with Lancome about a different color teal, like there's other artists who are like actually are doing this for creative purposes and not for marketing purposes. And I can pull a lot of that color psychology in and give some context to some of these color choices. And I started doing it honestly just because it was a passion and it just completely took off. And now I am, where I get to really like do all of these interesting deep dives. And it seems like it's really resonating with people. So that's been really awesome.
You did a analysis on the White Stripes discography, and I guess I should ask before we go into that, like, in terms of the band, what is your connection? Casual fan, a passerby? What's your connection with the White Stripes?
I would say casual fan nostalgia for me. Like, a lot of their music was coming out when I was in middle school and high school.
Sure.
So the White Stripes, along with the Killers, were one of the bands that like made me feel cool. Like, I was like cooler than I probably was
You and me both.
in middle school. But I think now as an adult and someone who like really cares a lot about artistic choices, like, one of the things I admire about the White Stripes is the ability to remove and to create more restrictive rules. Like, when I was going into their discography, like, one of the things I learned from them that now when I'm interviewing other artists, I take as something I ask, which is, what are you removing over time? A lot of people ask, like, what do you add over time? What are you learning over time? What's like the culmination, because we think of music like a collage, but we don't often think about, like, how do we restrict ourselves as artists, and what are those rules that we add so that we're constantly pushing our boundaries. I also think a lot of artists don't really do that. Like, they stay in things like that maybe feel like their safe zone. But what I admire about the White Stripes is that as soon as something becomes successful, they're adding a different set of rules to make it more difficult for them to create something and it still be successful, and then it becomes successful. So I would say, like, from a fan perspective, casual listener nostalgia. From a nerd perspective, it's about I love the way that they approach how they think creatively and how they evolve as artists.
I love what I have many follow-up questions. I'll go with my first one. What is the importance? What do you find? What do you find when you ask about that restrictive question? Like, what are something you want to remove from your art in whatever capacity that is? Because I've never even considered approaching a piece of artwork, creating art, or an artist with going, okay, well, that's good, but then over time, what gets removed? So when you ask that question, what generally is the response, and what are you looking to achieve in asking that?
The best part of that question, I think, is that I get a random and completely different response every single time I ask it. I've never had two people say even like the same themes. Literally, like 2 days ago, I just interviewed the band called Biking with Francis, which kind of gives like Brockhampton, kind of gives Steve Lacy a little bit. And I asked them that question, and they said that now, so their first big single was called Type Time. And they said now, 3 years later, they refuse to talk about phones because of typing. They refuse to talk about time. So they've created basically kind of the same framework of what made us successful. Let's intentionally not do that. And let's add these rules so we're pushing our creative boundaries. But I think it's different for every artist, right? Because like some artists will speak to, here's some visual things that we are now no longer doing, or here's some sonic things that we are now no longer doing. But like if you even ask me that, like, I don't know what I would answer because no one's ever asked me that. So it's a fun question to get people to like really think like deeply about like, okay, well, have I outgrown, or what have I stopped doing?
Listen, that question alone, I'm going to spend this week. This episode will come out on the following Tuesday, and from now until when I record the kind of bookends of the show, I'm just going to be spending my time going, what should I remove in this creative endeavor? So this is already, we're a few minutes in. This is already so much fun. With the White Stripes, like, I'm sure in your research for your project, which I encourage anyone listening to go to your Instagram and check out the White Stripes and the Jack White stuff and the series in general. But Jack has been very vocal and very open. It's like that's how he thrives in artistic endeavors and creativity. It's like, you're going to get the most pure thing through minimal distractions, put things in place that prevent you from overthinking. And everything about the White Stripes is restrictions. And you brought up such a great point where every time they put impose new restrictions on them, you'd think that they would be screwed, essentially handcuffed, and not be able to do anything. And they an entire new side of their artwork comes on full display, and you realize just how special this group is. In the song that we're talking about this week is from the Distill era, and they went from their first incredibly noisy, loud, I don't know if we're ever going to make another debut album, and then put all these restrictions on with blues and acoustics and sonically, and depending on what day of the week it is, I could tell you this is, lo and behold, their best album by far. I don't really have a follow-up question to that. I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed the restrictions and how important it is to the White Stripes.
Well, I have a follow-up question, actually.
Sure.
So I don't want to get too far ahead in case you're planning on talking about this later, but this is as if you've probably seen any of my videos, any of my followers watching this will know that I'm like a serial over preparer for absolutely anything
Sure.
I do. So one of the things I was interested about is what was the context of their relationship
Sure.
during the recording and what was public knowledge. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you're the White Stripes expert here. I'm just, providing the literally color commentary. But I think that the single we're going to be discussing today is one of the last pieces of recorded media before the rumors started coming out that they were really married and then ultimately were divorced. So I was interested what your perspective is, given a couple of different things. Given one, that the cover we're talking about has technically two alternative versions, and Jack White's version basically kind of combines both of the themes. And so I was wondering, do you feel like it was reflective of how it was feeling at the time? Like, now that we know the added context, does that change your perception of the song at all?
What in this journey of kind of rediscovering the band and appreciating them and kind of analyzing them through grown up or mature eyes and ears, I really think that, in terms of the restrictions that were placed on this band, being a member of the White Stripes was incredibly difficult by design and by unfortunate circumstances. So based on what I've learned is their marriage kind of ended mid to late 99. And then they were divorced in March of 2000, and the rumors and the Detroit, as soon as their kind of popularity rose and their the size of their stock, I believe it was the Detroit Free Press and some other major newspapers actually did the research and published it. And around this time, I would say I find more themes are related to, like, Distill is a bit of a sadder, more heartbroken record. I feel like it's more reflective of what they were going through at the time as they got more popular and they got more comfortable in their identities and who they were, and they kind of knew, like, what we're doing is strange but good. I feel they got so much more playful in how they presented themselves and how they carried themselves. So this era is the time that I would say they're dealing with some hardships, and things aren't as rosy, and just things maybe aren't as fun as they were before. And the band's really conflicted because they both know that this is a special project that they have. These are two arty kids, and they know that regardless of all the weird stuff they're doing, people are clamoring onto it. They are resonating with it. And it was actually Meg that was like, we can't quit this band, even though she may or may not have kicked Jack out of the house. But, they knew the importance, they knew the significance, and they knew, like, we can't stop doing this because it would be a disservice to ourselves, and it'd be a disservice to just music fans. And here we are a quarter decade later, thanking them for doing that.
Well, to add on to what you're saying, I don't know what the right way to articulate this is, but I think part of it is also like I've read a little bit about Jack's perception of his relationship and how he wanted to be perceived and how he wanted to communicate that. And he talks about like saying like, if I say brother and sister, people will listen to the music. If I say ex-husband, ex-wife, like they're going to have specific connotations and they're not going to focus as much on the music. But I also think there is like, I do a lot of breakdowns on trans artists. And this is like totally left field, but I promise it'll relate. One of the things I notice is that when an artist is trans before they come out, there's their themes in their music, but also the themes in their colors are very safe, very muted, very dark, and it looks and sounds like there's some level of like holding a weight on your chest because you're not able to speak and identify your true self publicly. Versus when they come out, they're opening their color palette up entirely. You start seeing the full spectrum of the rainbow. You start seeing neons. You start seeing brighter and more honest and truthful songs. Like, I wonder what your perspective is on this, but my interpretation is that when the rumor started circulating, in some ways it was almost like a relief because it happened at a time in the band where they had already proven their prowess and their, I guess, like technical maybe like expertise. So it kind of happened serendipitously because then the music they produced afterwards was able to explore different themes, was able to feel more honest because now there's not a weight on their chest. Like they have to play this specific character in order to get buy-in from the public.
Yeah, in this situation, the train has left the station. It's going down the right path. It is going down the successful path, and it's like great. They know, like, okay, now we can treat it like wrestling, or we can treat it like drag. It's like, this is a character. You can either get it or you can sit on the outside and try to wonder how the magic is performed. And it really seemed like outside of a vocal group of people that it's like, I need to know the extreme specifics of this. And you go, well, why? And it's like, well, I need to know. And that loosely translates to what you were talking about with artists in the trans community. I need to know exactly what's going on. Do you, or can you just enjoy the art that's coming out in a special and unique way? And most of the people will eventually go, yeah, anybody open-minded goes, yeah, I don't need to know the specifics. I don't need to know how A to B to C on the weekends. It's just, I'm going to appreciate this art, and I'm going to let that individual be who they are on the stage and off the stage, and appreciation will do the rest of the work.
Yeah, exactly.
So, quickly, if people haven't seen the analysis of the White Stripes discography, Elevator Talk, what did you find through their 6 albums? When you dissected their, again, easy to dissect with only 3 colors.
Is it possible to share my screen? Because I actually have some of the slides I can show your listeners a couple of the graphs.
Sure, go ahead. If there should be a share option, and if...
Let's see. Do you see my screen?
There it is.
Okay, cool. So what I wanted to do, usually this is like a very different analysis for me because usually I track how colors change across a discography. So for example, I'll look at Kanye and I'll say like, before Kanye changed his name to Ye, he was using full spectrum rainbow. Afterwards, he was using much more like neutral muted tones. There wasn't any ability to do that here because obviously it is 3 colors. So when you say like, oh, this was easier, this was actually for me harder because then I had to figure out like, well, And this is why I think I respect the White Stripes so much, and why I opened the conversation saying that I think the way that they continually add rules and restrictions is something I've not seen done at this level for a given artist. And the first thing that they established in the first 2 albums is their choice of colors. And I think that speaks very strongly to their branding. Like, if I told you, name a band that only uses red, black, white, there's only one option. So you now start associating these colors with this band, and you see a new album cover, you already know what to expect, at least visually. However, within that, there's so much a visual evolution. So the first thing that I did was break down the percentage of colors that each cover used. And I get a lot of hate for doing this way. And I kind of agree with the hate because, like, basically people will say, like, oh, you use the alternative album cover. Like, there's XYZ other album cover. And so this
You
isn't
used all of the, I would say, the main, or there's no variance on here. Just because Meg's wearing a black dress instead of a white dress, those haters need to mind their manners.
Exactly. And I always try to pick the ones that are on either Spotify or Apple Music, because those are the ones that the artist wants us to see today. So that if any of my followers are listening and they're going to ask me in the comments why I pick which ones I pick, it's usually always if there's like an official source where they're like, this is the album cover.
Yeah.
And then if not, it's whatever's on Spotify, because that's what I think they want us to associate with that music today. But so the gist of what I did is I essentially took every album and I counted the colors of pixels, and then I did like the distribution of each color to show how I believe they change the distribution of color to match the music. And I also graphed that too, because I was interested to see, like, are there trends? Like, for example, we do see trend-wise, they're using less red over time, but there are certain instances like where we see a little bit more red. So what does that mean for that album? So basically, this is where I go and I start to find like any type of pattern. Another one I'm seeing is like black starts to slowly become like a staple. It is like kind of, I would say this lives in like accent territory and then becomes like staple color territory.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say, like, overall for me, like, the most important color in this discography, I think, is red, or the lack thereof red. Like, their last album, for example, like, the red is so intentional and it's just in the graphic, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the only real color here is red, because there's like a lot of color discourse, like, is white every color or no color? Like, is black every color or no color? If you're using additive colors or subtractive colors, like, so the only technically color that we can all agree is a color is red. And I think red is one of the most interesting colors in music for me, because red is aggression, red is also pain, and red is passion. So the red spectrum actually covers a lot of diverse emotions. You have red when you're really deeply in love with someone. You also have red when you're deeply in heartbreak. You also have red when you have like a lot of like aggressive energy and you're trying to like really be taken seriously, or you're really pursuing a goal. Like, red is something that, like, if you're like an extroverted person who's like very business oriented, or like a finance tech bro, red is like your archetypal color that you're like you're just trying to be successful. And so what's interesting to me, I didn't actually even really talk about this in the video, but it's like the characteristics of red over time, I think, change. Red is also temptation too. I didn't even mention that. So if we just look at basically like an emotional breakdown of what these color choices to me mean, I think there's a couple obvious ones. Like, I think their debut album is very much like the most aggressive red. And it actually statistically is the most red album. To me, this is like, we want to be seen. It's like flashing red light, look at our music. But at the same time, there's also a dichotomy here, because this album to me feels like the most raw album.
Absolutely. That
And
album, not to cut you off, but
no,
at the
please,
time,
please.
that album's kind of a gigantic collection of all the songs. And if you it has the most, it's kind of all over the place. It's incredibly raw. It doesn't sound the best. And you really get the idea that Jack particularly is like, I don't know if I'm going to get another chance to record these songs or be this band.
Yeah.
Let's just get it all out there. So when you talk about ambition or just that raw emotion, it makes perfect sense why so much of that album, 65, almost 66% of that cover is that bright, vivid red.
Yeah. And then in total contrast, I would say Get Behind Me, Satan is like that red temptation. Like I was saying, like we associate red with so many different things. It can be a red rose that symbolizes someone we love. It can be a red devil that symbolizes someone who maybe isn't good for us. Like that's, I think, kind of like like why I think I love the White Stripes' use of visual language is that they're constantly not just reinventing the sound. They're not just reinventing like the style. For example, like this is a reference to a modern art. I never pronounce it right. I always say distyle, and I don't think that's right. And you're pronouncing it correctly, so I'll just let you continue pronounce it correctly.
This is an ongoing battle with the Dutch language on this podcast, but I'm now at a point where I'll call it de still.
Perfect. Just still. But yeah, and then we have like what I would say is like a very feels like very raw of all of the covers. Like, I said raw was in their debut, and I do still stand by that. I do think this is a raw color distribution. But when we talk about just like really raw and emotionally vulnerable, this almost feels like an old photograph or like taking a photo, and it feels like, to me, maybe the most candid. So
it's funny you
yeah.
bring up raw in terms of like emotions. Jack has gone on at the time of Icky Thump was released. He just kind of would simply say this album just sounds, or like themes of this album is just being happy, being comfortable, like being relaxed, being able to take that deep breath and just enjoy life. So yeah, I would say it's a raw album because they're just in a comfortable place of exploring whatever avenue they want to in terms of their music.
And emotionally honest too. And that's exactly what I was saying before when I was like, when you remove the expectations of what people think they have to be and they're able to live like their authentic truth, that's when you get kind of like the freeing feeling of like, okay, like if there's no expectations on us, what is the art we actually want to produce?
That's very cool, man. um Again, I could listen to you talk about this for God knows how long, but it is a conversational medium. So let's dive into this song. I wanted to ask you a question off the top because of somebody that kind of studies artwork in the level you do. It's an easy one. Do the White Stripes sound like the way they look or the way they present themselves?
I love this question. This is maybe the favorite question I've been asked, like, in the last week. I think yes and no. I think that one thing that they do really well is their visuals are very well branded and very specific to them, but their sound is so much more diverse than I think what their visuals present. And I think that is a happy surprise. Like when I say no, I actually don't think they always sound like what they look like. I mean that as a compliment. Like I'm always expecting one thing because I associate a specific album with a specific sound, and then you discover a new piece of media and you're like, okay, this looks pretty similar, but it sounds so much more full, or it sounds so much more experimental, or it sounds so different. Like Jack White's solo stuff is like that too, where the album art itself looks, I would say, like relatively similar. It's all blue, white, black, right? But each album sounds like a true evolution on the one previous. And if they opened up the entire rainbow, like I think I would probably pull other colors for different like sonic profiles. But because they don't do that, like they're doing that really in like the visual design. So whether it's more fine art, whether it's more photography, whether it's more graphic design, maybe that's a complex answer, but it's something I think about a lot.
That's interesting. It's interesting. You know, the close-minded individual in me will look at the album De Still, and I'm like, this should be some sort of Kraftwerk looking and sounding band that sounds like, you know, early 70s computers. Jack quite often would talk about like they were afraid to play the music that they were playing. They were both big fans of the blues. Jack White loved Blind Willie McTell, which is who did Lord Send Me an Angel, and they didn't want to be perceived as just a couple of white kids, you know, being a blues hammer bar band. So he came up with all of these distractions to, you know, one, to trick people into not realizing they're playing the blues, you know, out of his own insecurities, but also he was very keen on presentation, on, you know, being recognizable. And yeah, if the White Stripes sounded like or looked like, you know, the bands that they were influenced by, I don't think they would leap off the page. And this band started when both of their musical abilities, Jack and Meg, was whether they're learning to play the instrument or learning their actual true abilities inside them, they weren't very good on stage if you listen to the kind of, you know, very early recordings. So it's like, let's have all of these facades up so that people don't focus on the bads, or they see the unique things and the presentation, and they maybe give them a second chance or a third chance. And this song's not very good, but they find it in the next one. So it just seems like everything was put in place to make this band incredibly accessible, but for so many different reasons.
Well, not only that, I mean, I think, like, when we think about the source material, right? Like the actual song we're talking about, I listened to both versions of the original, and it is quite, for lack of a better word, like sexy for the time, like given that it was in the 1930s.
Of course.
But as that song has aged, we kind of conditioned that type of music to be very formal, maybe very kind of old school, like definitely I would say not sexy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but and so what I think Jack White does really well is take the source material and translate it so that it's viewed today thematically how it would have been viewed then. Like his versions of everything he covers, like especially this song specifically, is sexy, it's cool, it's interesting, it feels dangerous. Back then, a listener, like the reason that was popular back then is because it was controversial, because it was funny, because it was, you know, a little bit provocative. And I mean, now we're kind of inundated with like provocation in like many different ways. So contextually, especially with the presentation and old style guitar, we just, I think, I guess, associate that type of music with like a very antiquated feel and even maybe view. Like, for example, when I was listening I listened to the original first because I wanted to hear the source material before I listened to the cover. And I listened to the song while I was reading the lyrics. And as I was reading the lyrics, I was like, because it's like there's like little like, oh, like I didn't realize like people were really talking about that back then. And now hearing Jack White's version, like he took everything from the source material but made his little improvements so that a listener today who didn't hear the original version of the song would still feel the same way a listener then hearing the original song would have felt. I don't know if that makes sense.
I totally see that. And yeah, you when you sit and dissect this, this is an old-timey blues number. There's no way it could be provocative. And then you're like, oh man, this guy's really getting around. And oh, this guy's got a bit of he's a bit of a condescending mind, and he's really contradicting himself. But what Jack has done is he actually took Blind Willie McTell did 2 versions of Lord Send Me an Angel in the 30s, and then he did another song, or maybe another installment in this series called Ticket Agent Blues. And Jack kind of combined the two to capture those themes, from those raw, dangerous, kind of sexy themes, but also kind of make the song and the story that he was telling a little more a little more complete. And it's not just about this womanizer going from town to town. He's kind of realizing the errors in his ways, or the limitations, or maybe this isn't the best idea. And so he captures all of that, but he does it in a way that you don't go, well, this is sexist, this is misogynist. And whether he did that intentionally or he just went, I really like both songs, I won't know, but whatever he decided to do, it worked, and it worked really well.
Well, I actually have a bunch of thoughts. If we want to get into the combination of the 2 different lyrics.
Sure.
I have a ton of thoughts, and it relates actually to the 2 alternative album covers too.
Sure.
So my interpretation, and I did try to look for someone more knowledgeable and get a real interpretation, but there is none. So we're gonna go with my interpretation of each version of the song, is that one of them feels, for lack of a better word, braggadocious maybe, or cocky confident, in kind of a way that's ooh, I get around, yeah, my girl's cheating, but I'm also cheating, who even really cares, I got all these women, whatever. But then Ticket Agent Blues to me feels like maybe the grown-up version of that, where he feels disillusioned slightly, there's he has all these women and whatever, but at the end of the day, he's asking the ticket agent, where did my girl go?
Mm-hmm.
I will do whatever it takes to get to her. And then it's okay, well, she doesn't really love me. And then it's okay, well, I guess I'll cheat. All women kind of suck. Don't be with a married woman. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that version of the song feels more like he is being promiscuous because he's heartbroken.
Yeah.
So the added context feels much sadder, and it's to me, in my generation, I'm who hurt you?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the original version of the song and the lyrics to me felt much more young guy, kind of proud of his exploits or whatever. And so when Jack White chose to combine them, because he takes elements that are uniquely in one versus uniquely in 2, when he combines them, I think he does it in a really smart way, because he kind of makes it tell almost a complete story with an emotional arc, and it feels more, to me, it feels more like modern storytelling, because it feels like a sympathetic villain, or sympathetic hero, maybe, depending on your moral. But yeah, I thought that was really awesome. And so when I was looking at the covers, because you sent me 2 different covers,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
They did 2 versions of this single, same song, of course, different artwork. One was just for standard release in North America and wherever, but they were going on a tour of New Zealand and Australia and Japan, a total whirlwind tour. Some guy really liked the band that had a connection to that hemisphere, and was I think there's something here, why don't you come with me, or come tour here? So to have something to sell, or to signify the importance of this tour, they make a alternate copy, or an alternate version of the single that looks nothing like the Distill kind of photo shoot that they did for the North American version.
Yes. So my interpretation, and I could be reading completely too much into this, which is kind of the nature of my content, is just massively overthinking everything. Some of it turns out to be true, some of it turns out to be BS, and kind of that's the nature of the game, right? But my interpretation of this, and this is I'm showing the Japan cover, right?
Yep. Yes, you are.
So I felt whenever I see alternative covers to anything, whether it's an album, like Mitski's a great example. Her most recent album, I don't know if you've heard of Mitski. She's kind of like alt rock situation, but she has an album out where the digital cover for for Apple Music and Spotify is a very cropped in cat. And the album is called Nothing Is About to Happen to Me. And the vinyl version expands it and shows there's another cat about to attack her. So it changes the meaning of the album completely. And she's giving the basically her truest fans, the ones who are going to buy vinyl, the true experience of what the actual art is supposed to be. And she's giving the casual listeners, the people who are just putting it on a Spotify playlist and probably not even really caring about the backstory of the album, a cursory glance of what she thinks at a high level what somebody should get from the music. So my interpretation of this is, let's go back actually to the original cover. Yeah. Okay. So this is the original North American cover. To me, if we translate that same thesis, this is what they wanted people to get from a cursory glance. This is like, hey, this is related to this album. We want you to kind of associate this song with this album. It feels very cohesively marketed. Then we switch to this cover. This feels like, hey, this is for really specific fans in a really specific market. If you're buying a single on vinyl in advance of this tour that I'm doing in not even my primary music market, you're probably a pretty strong fan. So to me, what this does is, like, when you look at these two covers, like, they're completely different. We can talk about this orange all day long, because part of me is like, was this a printing error? Part of me is like, was this actually something, like, because you look at the red and the red's a little different, but I'll get to that in a second. But I think this is like very black, and it is pretty dark and very high contrast. And it's a photograph. It looks much more candid. They're standing in snow. It feels much more maybe like emotionally raw.
Yes.
And what I was saying before about how the song itself kind of has this very emotional arc, because he, for lack of a better word, maybe Frankensteined two versions of the lyrics. This feels like the commercial, like, oh, this song is happy, whatever. It has this bravado. It has this confidence. But this speaks more to the vulnerability. Like how I was saying, like the Ticket Agent Blues version of the song feels more like it's sad, and it has the context of like why he is behaving the way he's behaving, why he's cheating, why he treats women like this. It almost feels like the theme of that song is communicated in the dichotomy of the covers, where this is kind of like, oh, like, you know, we're confident, this is the music we make, like, you associate it with our upcoming record, blah blah blah, and this is like how we really feel, and it has the context and like raw quality. And again, I could be completely reading into this.
I love this because on the Japan, New Zealand, Australia version here, they look hard. They are out of place. They are not in their element. Everything about the White Stripes is planned meticulously. They didn't sign with Atlantic Records because they would put a green Atlantic logo on the spine of the vinyl. So like, they're doing this on purpose. Anybody that looks at this goes, oh, graphic design is my passion meme runs through their head, because the White Stripes text is off, is we're in the corner. You've got this bad crop of this photo. It just looks like somebody printed and taped it together and photocopied it. But like, you have Jack and Meg who are standing in the snow. They're completely out of their element. They are not prepared for it. You know, they are not where they should be. They should. I see this as I see where the text of the White Stripes says is like, that's where home is. They are very, very far away from it, and everything around them is just this like dark loneliness, because they're you know, it's one thing to go on a tour of, you know, you're from Detroit, oh, we're going to go on a tour of Europe or the United Kingdom or something, but to go to somewhere that is literally the opposite of where you are, you know, obviously geographically, not culturally, but it's like I can't think of a more vulnerable thing to do as a band at this stage of their career when they're still trying to realize their abilities. Like, I would be shit scared out of my element too, and I think it's depicted perfectly in this cover.
Yeah, I completely agree. What you said, being out of your element, I mean, literally, like, I feel like that is represented by even just the snow and how they're dressed. Like, it's a physical representation of, like, okay, if I'm going somewhere, I would at least try to be prepared. Like, I know Drake has a cover that is, I think it's like a collab album with Party Next Door, where he's like, he's in the snow, but he like looks like he belongs there. He has
Yeah,
like a big parka on, and he's from Canada. So in a way, it's like you're in your element.
of course.
This is almost like saying, like, I feel out of my element and I am out of my element, but that's the nature of what this song and what this tour and what this experience is supposed to do for us as artists.
The White Stripes have had a few photo shoots in the snow around the Get Behind Me Satan era. I believe it's the My Doorbell album. It's got, Meg in an elegant dress with two small girls in black and red dresses, and it's just like, that whole album is them out of their element and in an uncomfortable situation and that vulnerability. And it's like, listen, again, you said we're Canadian. Nobody's standing out in the snow like that. It's you're putting yourself out there and you're ready to face the consequences and hope that it all works in your favor. And also, photographing in snow is very aesthetically pleasing.
Right,
Now,
exactly.
Now, you said in conversation that you thought that that you liked the single cover artwork almost more than the cover artwork for De Still, the album. What I kind of agree with you in the cover artwork for Lord Send Me an Angel. It looks like the artwork that they're involved with is living and breathing and physical, and they are putting the work in. This is a hands-on DIY process. Well, if you kind of look at the De Still album artwork, it's like, oh, that's just they're near some colors. So something about it just really leaps off the page to me, and I looked at it completely different from our conversation then.
Well, I think the reason I like it more is because hold them both up side by side again. So, Distigal, it's like they are there, I guess. They're kind of in like this fake world that they've constructed. But in the single cover, they're interacting with the art, which
Yeah,
almost makes it feel like more like we are art versus like, I don't know, the Distigal feels like we are in an artistic environment. And then the single cover is like we are the art ourselves
yeah.
and like we're building this world together. It has like more of kineticism, I guess, because they're actually like interacting with this thing that they've built.
I do really love that. A couple of notes. I was emailing with Ben Blackwell. He's the co-founder of Third Man Records and the official White Stripes archivist and Jack's nephew, even though they're like 5 years age difference. This song was recorded specifically for a single. It was not to be on the De Still album. The tour was in November of 2000, and in very quick turnaround process, the White Stripes recorded this in about September at Jack's house. Hilarious, of course. The B-side of this is the "You're Pretty Good Looking for a Girl" trendy American remix version. Courtney, all this is the song off the title song off De Still, or the lead song off De Still, with auto-tune on it. That's the extent of it. They were ahead of their time. They beat T-Pain by like 5 years.
I love that.
And after the artwork was completed, Ben Blackwell says he came up with the term the Three Island Tour. And he said Jack seemed particularly bummed that we hadn't been able to use that for the sleeve beforehand, given that everything that Jack White does, and particularly the White Stripes, was all in elements of three. So that was a missed opportunity for them. In terms of the song, they love to play it. Jack White loves Blind Willie McTell. It's one of his blues heroes. I'm sure Meg really loved and appreciated him too, because both of them just students and appreciators of blues music. But he's gone on record a lot. Distill was actually dedicated to Blind Willie McTell, and they played this song 123 times live. That's
I did not know that.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
That's crazy.
They love playing this song. It was their 28th most played song of all time. And it was first performed on June 20th, 2000 in the Empty Bottle in Chicago, Illinois. So this song became an incredibly important and significant song to the White Stripes, pretty damn quick. In June, it becomes a live song. In November, it's a single. And they go on to, go back to this to kind of, remind themselves of their influences and what the whole goal of this band is. It was last played on July 23rd, 2007, at an arena gig in Boston on the Icky Thump tour. And oddly enough, Jack White did play this song as a solo artist. He did it about 3 times, one while he was still with the White Stripes, and then 2 when he, after the band dissolved. The last time it was played was in Miami at the Fillmore in September of 2014. And I think that around this time, his second solo album came out, Lazaretto, which has a song on it called 3 Women, and it's based on 3 women blues. And you listen to it and you go, this is a lot of Lord Send Me an Angel is in this song. So maybe he just thought it's time to play this one that's on the record instead of going back to the White Stripes stuff. As we slowly begin to wind down here, when you first heard this recording, the White Stripes recording, what kind of stood out to you? What kind of leapt off the earbuds? What was your first impressions of it?
I loved Meg's percussion. I really loved it. I mean, I love her just as a percussionist in general, so allow my bias stand to show. But
Wrong show for that.
I think so. I also love the original. I kind of prefer Ticket Agent Blues slightly, only because I like the guitar a little bit better. I think it's like more has like a more of an interesting strum pattern.
Yeah.
But I felt like when I first heard the cover version, so at first I thought I was going crazy because I was reading the same lyrics as the original Lord Send Me an Angel, and I was listening and I was like, these are not the same. And then I was like, wait, there's another recording. Okay. So I was like, wait, hold on. And I think what I really liked is like I was expecting a 1-to-1 recreation.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get a 1-to-1 recreation. I got a thematic interpretation of what the song was supposed to be, and I was really pleasantly surprised. I know we're winding down, but I actually had a question for you.
We don't have to wind down. Keep going.
Okay. So one of the things that you taught me actually through this conversation, but also through, because you gave me like a prep doc, so I was like reading through it, is that this song is primarily a live performance song. And because of the nature of the limitations of technology at the time when this was recorded, we have 2 versions of it. But it's pretty safe to assume that there was hundreds of versions of it. It was like really meant to be performed in live spaces to, like I was saying before, Frankenstein other verses from popular songs, from new ones he wrote, from ad-libbing of just things that were going on in his life, that the surviving 2 versions that we have are probably not indicative of like the life and the breath of the song. And you just asked me like, what was my first impression? This wasn't my first impression, but this is one of my impressions.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, I like that Jack White preserves some of that. I listened to some of his live performances, and he does sometimes reorder lyrics. He does kind of try to make the live performance feel so visceral every new time he plays it, which I would imagine is probably one of the reasons why he loves playing this song live. But I'm wondering, like, what your opinion is on... there's a word for the Frankensteining lyrics, and I'm losing it. I don't remember
Amalgam?
it. Maybe, yeah, it sounds right.
That was in the email that I got today from Ben. So carry
Okay,
on.
perfect.
Amalgam.
So I'm wondering, like, what your perspective is, like, hearing the, like, cemented in time version that we have on Spotify, which unfortunately can't change because obviously it can't
Sure.
change. It's like a one-shot recording, versus hearing the live performances, and what you think, like, because they do change a little bit. Like, do you feel like Jack feels like he has the creative freedom to add even more things? Like, give me a little bit of, like, your perception on this. Do you like it or not like it? Do you want it to kind of stay the same? Because, like, even today as listeners, like, if I go to a Lady Gaga concert, fans are expecting to be able to sing the songs.
Of course.
Like, if she was going to add a custom verse, they'd probably be like, oh my God, like, we got the Miami verse. But, like, they're not expecting it, right? Like, so I feel like it's a lost art personally, and I would love to see artists do it. I like that I'm seeing a little bit of that in Jack. I would want to see even more of it from other artists. And yeah, I was just curious what your perspective was.
He's, as long as he's been a musician, he's in some way or another wanted to play a song differently every time. There's a reason why his time with traditional bands is a little limited or has a shelf life, and why being a solo artist with a very tight backing band that he can Bob Dylan his way through things, or with the White Stripes, those are the best avenues for his art. But he always wants to play something slightly differently, and I had a last minute whirlwind trip to Chicago last week to actually meet him, and
What? You should have led with that.
Oh, I did a whole podcast about it. Here, he did an event in Chicago with a guitar pedal company, and as long as I've been a fan, I've never had an interactive opportunity to, I'll buy a guitar pedal and he'll sign it and I'll say hi. The lofty goal of this podcast is to have him come on and do a mystery song. Well, do that 3 times. So I literally flew to Chicago to ask him to come on the podcast. I'll think about it, which was pretty optimistic in my mind. But yeah, there I am talking to Jack White on last Friday.
Oh my God! I love his jacket. Side note, he has the best fits.
He knows what he's doing. He's utilized all the distill covers, or colors, I should say, because black, white, and yellow for Third Man, black, white, and blue for the solo stuff, and black, white, and red for the White Stripes. But anyway, I went and saw him in Chicago, and I wound up being able to go to the gig thanks to the amazing community that this podcast has kind of created. And I went there expecting to go to a White Sox game and somehow got to go to the concert instead. But he's playing White Stripes songs, and the bones are there, but he is playing it in a way that speaks to him or that represents the environment that he is in. And everything feels special to, not only that night, but also the region that you're in. It was my first time ever being in Chicago, and you have all this romanticism about Chicago blues, and he's playing Black Math off Elephant, a straight up punk rocker track, and there's this incredible breakdown that just sounds like anything that could have been coming out of that town 100 years ago or whatever, and it just makes it special. It just means like you have to go see him because something is going to be unique to your experience, and it feels like that was instilled in him at a very young age. And it's something he's going to do as long as he's breathing. So to have multiple versions of Lord Send Me an Angel that they performed hundreds of times, that's just so great, because maybe it's a snapshot into how he's feeling that day or the issues he's going through, or, maybe there's more Lord Send Me an Angel one show, and then there's way more Ticket Agent Blues the next show. And it gives you an opportunity to, you know, I love, you know, if I want to hear Poker Face, maybe I do want to hear that like it's on the album, but I would also love to hear something that's a little more representative of what they're going through that time. Obviously, there are so many variables into live music these days with lighting cues and set checks, you know, costume changes and all this stuff. But like, that's great. But sometimes you just want, you know, music as a raw, primal, you know, a way to express yourself and emote. And sometimes you just want that authentic nature, and Jack's still able to give it to us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love it. I think we need to start a movement. We need to, I'll petition, I'll stand
I'll
outside
second
of
it.
Lady Gaga's house with a sign that says, please play Poker Face with new verses.
I'd like a bridge, a new bridge in Teeth.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been a remarkable conversation. I think you were a delight. I was nervous for this one because I only know I have a way of communicating about art, and you have yours, and I didn't know how they would translate. I knew there was some common grounds, but before we wrap up, I got to tell you, I truly appreciate this conversation. I think you're outstanding and just so cool.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I'm totally honored to even be considered to be a guest. Like, you are so knowledgeable, and I think we complement each other really well, because the stuff I don't know, you definitely do. And then I can come in with like, oh yeah, well, this is actually technically orange and not red.
That's so cool. But as we officially wrap up the podcast, the next time, whenever that may be, you listen to this song, Lord Send Me an Angel by the White Stripes, what is going to go through your mind?
I love this question. I think I'll probably think about you. And I think, honestly, what will really be going through my mind is like trying to instill in myself the ability to be flexible as an artist. Like what we were just talking about, where like he's changing live performances to fit how he feels in that moment. And one thing I took from the White Stripes when I made the video is like, okay, well, what are the rules that I can start making? But this single, like what I think I'm taking from it, and especially from this conversation, is like, what are the ways that I can, even with something I produced or a very standardized process I have in my workflow, what are ways that I can start to be a little bit more flexible as an artist to allow myself the space to communicate something that is like only temporally relevant for me right now.
Okay, that was Courtney. I'm Ryan. Ryan and Courtney. I say it in the episode, I say it in the conversation, but good Lord, was it a delight to talk to Courtney, get a great insight into how she approaches a project and works with artists. And I've been thinking about that, you know, restricting question, you know, what's something you would remove from your creative project? I still don't have one, but I will tell you, and I'll tell you on an upcoming episode of the Hardest Podcast, which is hosted and produced I'm leaving that one in, which is hosted and produced by me, Ryan Schaap, artwork by Catlin Likely, Amanda Schultz is our assistant editorial producer, and Mike Noble is our Gato.